on his behalf. So today, like we've been announcing for the past few weeks, that we'll be having Stefanie. I mean, so Stefanie is so in Nigeria, we call it, we use this term called Oga. I know, Stefanie, you've not heard the word before. Oga means boss. So Stefanie is my boss, and she's got so much experience in building software product, building teams. Of course, she's going to introduce herself also, but I just thought to mention that we are so excited to have you join us, Stefanie, and we really want to learn from you. And yeah, so I'm just going to allow you to do more intro about yourself and take us through the session. Thank you, Stefanie.
Thank you, Kenny. I'm happy to be here today. I prepared a little something for today, a presentation. I'm just quickly going to try to share my screen, and I think you need to enable the screen sharing because Zoom says host needs to enable sharing. So maybe you can quickly do that.
Yes, I've enabled that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, now it works. Cool. Can you see my screen? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So today's topic, so hi from Berlin, I'm Stefanie. Today's topic is insider tips from a design hiring manager. So my name is Stefanie, I'm director of design at Forto. So I'm actually working with Kenny, who joined us, I think, how long is it? 7-8 months ago. So we went through the process. If you want to have some insights from the other side, how it was interviewing with me, then reach out to him. He can give you a few insights. So I want to quickly introduce myself. So I'm originally from Austria. I'm now in Berlin. I'm director of design at Forto. I have about 17, 18 years of experience as a designer. So that means I started off when in Austria, there was no such thing as user experience design. So I think I had, 10 different job titles, but then I quickly transitioned into UX because it was what made me most excited. I'm director of design. I'm building a team. I generally focused on helping organizations to unlock the strategic value of design in the last couple of years by building teams. So a little overview of my design leadership background. So I think it started off when in 2012, I was working for an agency as a designer, as a lead UX designer, and I decided to do my own thing. So in 2013, I started my own company. The name was 9 Dots Digital, and we were kind of like a UX design consultancy. I had this company for about 6-7 years, and then I moved to Berlin. I was mainly working abroad, so I was like, okay, I don't want to have a company in Austria when I'm never there. My team was a bit lonely, so I decided to move to Berlin. I worked as a lead consultant for a while, and then I came across this opportunity at Forto, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about in a minute. And I've been working there for a bit over 1 year. And my current role, I actually put Kenny in the picture. So my current role is I'm leading a team. I'm currently leading a team of 12 designers. Not everyone has joined yet because we actually relocate people from all over the world, and this sometimes takes some time, right? Because we go through the visa process. Forto is a logistic technology startup. We're a unicorn startup, which means that I think we had about 600 million euros investment so far. And I think the company valuation is now 2 billion or something. I don't know the exact number, which made us a unicorn startup a couple of months ago. And we're always hiring. At the moment, unfortunately, we don't hire entry-level designers because it's quite a complex business. But if you're interested in senior or lead designer roles, then pay our website a visit and you will find some job ads there. So today's topic, job hunting and hiring, it's very time consuming and it can be very demoralizing. So even me with my 17 plus years, I've been through so many interviewing processes. Of course, I got rejected like everyone else. So I kind of feel with everyone who has to go through their process. And I sometimes say to candidates, it's almost like a full-time job, right? I mean, you really, if you really want to find the right role, it is a full-time job. But the way I look at it is, it can also help you, right? Like it's better to look at it as an opportunity to grow and become better than being like really obsessed with this, okay, I have to land a job, Because I think we're designers, and if we act like this and we think like this, even through processes like job hunt or hiring process, then it really helps us to become better and to grow. And I wanted to introduce it to the way I look at it, because for me, like in my mind, everything I do in life almost is a design process, right? Like you can design everything. So the way I looked at it when I applied for different roles is like a design process, right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to kind of develop a very deep understanding for the person that you're going to meet, or the person that will review your application, right? Someone like me. I will talk a little bit more about basically my side of the story in the following slides. But I think this is really, really important to get it right. And the second step is you need to come up with a strategy, right? Like once you've done your homework and your research, you need to decide, okay, what's my strategy? How do I stand out? How does my application has to look like to stand out? And then, of course, the design part. I mean, it's the one that most designers talk about regularly, right? It's like, how do you build your portfolio? How do you structure a case study, and so on and so on. So I will talk a little bit about that. For me, the interviewing stage, I call it the test stage, right? Because you're gonna maybe interview with a couple of different companies, you will meet a lot of different people, and the way I look at it is almost like a user interview, right? I mean, they're kind of like your user or your customer, and every feedback you can get is a gift. And you always have the opportunity to iterate once you received feedback and you realized what was missing or maybe not that compelling enough. And then, of course, ideally at some point, a company found you and you found the right company and you land the job. So these are kind of like the 5 stages. So today's session is structured in 2 parts, kind of roughly. So let's see how it goes with time. So part 1 is I will walk you through a presentation of these 5 phases. The way I thought about it, because it's quite a long time slot, is that throughout each phase, while I'm presenting, if you have questions, post them in the chat, in the Zoom chat. And after each chapter, I will go through these questions. So you also don't have to be shy or scared to speak up. It's okay if you just post them to the chat. Of course, you can also speak up when we get to the Q&A, but if you feel more comfortable, post it to the chat. Once we're through the presentation part, I planned a slot to do a quick hiring manager review. So if any one of you has a portfolio, some application material or whatever that you would want me to have a look at, I'm happy to do so. The way I will do it is basically putting yourself a little bit in this position of as if I was your hiring manager, right? So because we don't have a lot of time, but actually in reality, I also don't have a lot of time to review applications. So I think it's a very realistic approach, right? Like to get like, okay, what is my first impression when I look at it? What are my first thoughts? What am I missing immediately when I look at it? And so on and so on. So if you have something, you can already think about it and prepare your material or your whatever portfolio link or Figma file or whatever it is. And then later in the second part, I can have a look at it. Cool. So phase 1, empathize, understand your audience, and of course also your goal when you go job hunting. So know your reviewer, the person who's going to review whatever you send or provide, right? If it's a portfolio link, if it's a motivation letter, whatever you send over, it's going to be someone like me. It's going to be someone in design leadership. And the problem is I basically have no time to really deep dive into all the applications. So I would say the average time for the first impression is about 10 seconds. You open it, you immediately get this first impression. And then if you say, okay, this looks interesting, then you do a bit more of a deep dive and you scan a case study, maybe a second case study within, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes. So I didn't put these numbers here to demotivate you, but this is just more to share the reality of, you know, how it really is when you go through like applications, because I have at the moment 4 open roles, but I think in peak times I had like 6, 7 open roles at the same time. So you cannot really spend that much time. So be aware that this is just the reality that you're facing, and whatever you prepare, like, make it parsable in a very minimal amount of time, right? Make sure that when I open it, that I get the most important information at the first sight, because I might not scroll until the end, or I might not read through a really long text. So I also want to share a little bit, why is that? So I blurred it out because it's actually a real screenshot. This is my calendar. I think it's my calendar, yeah, at the beginning of May. I think Kenny knows a little bit about my calendar. So this is my day, right? This is like how my week looks like. Saturday and Sunday are free, thankfully. But the rest of my week is like really, really full. And I wish I could spend more time on kindness, because I believe that hiring and finding the right people for the team is like really, really important. But unfortunately, I just don't have the time, right? Sometimes I do it during my lunch break, or sometimes I do it in the evening because I really, really want to invest my time in it. But the reason why we don't spend more time is not because we don't want to, but it's really because we can't, right? So that's why I wanted to include this real screenshot from my daily life. So the first thing I would like to talk about is that when you start applying, I would advise you do your homework. So I know when you apply for multiple companies, right? You never apply only for one, right? I'm not naive. I'm not like this, oh yeah, they only want to join my company. No, I know that you're applying at multiple companies, but at the same time, as a hiring manager, you want to see that, you know, you did your research on the company, you understand what we're doing, you understand what the business model is, and you might also have read through the company website, you might have found the blog, etc., etc. So I wanted to share with you, but I think I forgot to share my audio. So I'm going to stop sharing and then share again, because otherwise the audio does not play. Yeah. So I added a video. I don't know if Kenny's ever seen it. I think we published it before he joined, after he joined. So this is a video from the company I work for. You will find it on the career website. And these types of artifacts give you a quite good first impression of who is that company, who are the people who work at this company, what do they really care about? And I just wanted to show it as an example of stuff that you might find. I hope you can hear it.
Some challenges are easy to envision. Their effects are immediately evident and everyone can relate to them. Today we want to talk about bigger challenges that are almost always hidden. What if you could shape the ways in which goods move across the world, helping make it more transparent, more sustainable, and more efficient? I joined Forto because I'm very interested in the logistics sector, and I really enjoy that Forto is a global company and we are expanding so quickly. It's a fast-paced environment.
I always wanted to work in an environment where I had the chance to touch the thing that I was doing.
It's very motivating to be able to work in a field that requires complex problem solving. It's not like a top-down approach where somebody tells you, hey, you need to do X and Y, but it's rather this creative process of understanding problems and coming up with solutions and how to solve it.
I'm really motivated by the people who work here at Forto. I feel that they are very open-minded, intelligent, and I can really bounce back my ideas back and forth and build a better product.
We also have other perks, like for example, working in an environment that has a lot of repercussion on human health, on human well-being, on content like sustainability. It motivates me because I go around sometimes in the city, I go around Berlin, and I see things around me. Did someone ship that stuff with us? Was in one of our containers? It really makes you feel connected to the world around you.
We want to enable the change for more prosperity in the world, together with you.
So the reason why I wanted to show you this is not just because I want to advertise our company, but I also wanted to give you an example, right? Like if you look at a video like this, and you will find videos or blog posts, etc., on other company websites as well, you get a very good first impression of, what are you expected to have as values? Why do people work for this company? And you can calibrate the way you apply, and you can calibrate the way you show up and the way you give your answers during the hiring process, right? Like, for example, in Forto's case, we care about building a product that has an impact on the physical world, right? We care about this value of creative problem solving and really diving into complexity. So if someone did their homework and they show up for an interview, they would probably already talk about these aspects of their career and these aspects also in their past experience. Or maybe if you don't have this past experience, you can at least, talk about your passion for solving problems like this, even though, again, I'm very aware that you're not only applying at one company, you're applying at several companies, but it's really worth doing your homework so that people feel connected immediately, right? When they see your application or when they start talking to you. So, because in my belief, if you want to be successful as a product designer, you have to be excited about the challenge and the role, right? And also to some extent about the business. And as a hiring manager, I want to feel like you're genuinely interested in joining the company, right? Because there's nothing worse than sending me a generic. I even sometimes had applicants that they kind of had the wrong name in it, the wrong company name, the classic copy-paste error. So pay attention, be mindful about there's a person on the other side who expects you to be genuinely interested in their company and in them, right? Proofread a second time to not send the wrong portfolio with maybe the wrong name on it, of the wrong hiring manager or the wrong company. This is really, really important. And again, not because we believe that this is the only job you want, but it's just for a hiring manager important to see that you can be excited about our challenges and about our business. So, yeah, there's an audio, maybe someone or something. No?
I'm sorry, Debbie, you need to go on mute, please.
Oh yeah, now
sorry about
that. No problem. So a little recap, and if you have any questions, feel free to post them now. If you don't have questions, we can also go to the second chapter. So what is important? Keep in mind, people who review your application never have enough time. They have less time than they would like to have. So whatever you create, make it easy to parse for them. Make sure that they will see the most important information at the first sight, and they don't have to spend a lot of time on it, finding the most relevant stuff. Do your homework. Understand the company and the role you're applying for. Really read the job description. Try to find the details that matter to the company. Try to get a feeling for their values, their culture, their business model, etc. Because you will be better prepared, and you will also be better prepared to give maybe the answers that the other person on the other side wants to hear. And then, yeah, the third thing is, like, you should be genuinely interested. I don't know about you. I know when you're like entry-level designer, or you want to, get a lot of experience, you say, okay, I would do anything, right? Like, it doesn't matter. I can tell you from my 17 plus years of experience, you're going to be a better designer if you can get excited about the company, right? It doesn't mean like it has to be like the number one business or topic that you would like to work on, but really like go deep into yourself and ask yourself, can I be excited about this company? Because it will help you a lot, not only in the hiring process, but then also later. Because I don't believe it's only about craft or tools or whatever, especially in design, right? It's a creative profession, and you need passion, you need empathy. If you can't build empathy towards the customers and the business, you're really doomed sometimes, right? It's really, really hard to design something that is outstanding. So I don't see any questions in the chat. If there are no questions, because I don't want to call out people individually, I will just move forward to the second section. And feel free to post and ask anytime if something is not clear. So strategize. Number 2, I think the first thing that I would think about when you build your portfolio and the application is, I call it your superpower, right? What is your superpower? We all know that UX and product design, it's a very long process with a lot of different aspects, right? And you can never be excellent in all of them. You cannot be a brilliant researcher and at the same time a great visual designer. Like, these unicorn designers, in my experience, don't exist, especially because our profession gets more and more specialized over the years. So every hiring manager knows that, okay, there might be areas where you can excel, right? Where you're really an expert. And then there are other areas where you have basic knowledge, and that's okay. Or maybe you want to grow. So try to, when you design your portfolio, you prepare your material, try to think of your own superpower, right? What is it that will make you stand out compared to others? Maybe you have, for example, an experience in branding, or maybe you can code, right? Like Kenny, who worked as a software engineer in the past, right? Like, all of these things can make you stand out, and they give you like a very particular profile. So really think about this differentiation. Think about building this like profile that I can see, okay, so this is how you would also fit into my team. Because everyone on the team, like if you build a design team, you have people with different superpowers, and ideally they complement each other. So for me as a hiring manager, it's really important where you see your biggest strength, right? So I can kind of like project you into the team and into the company. So number 2, presentation matters. So think of it as, when you apply, you build your portfolio, maybe you send your resume, maybe you send a motivation letter, you probably have a LinkedIn profile, a Twitter, a Medium account, whatever it is. I just put a few examples here. What I see very often is that people send, for example, a CV that looks all over the place. Right? And you're like, even though your portfolio is good, in that moment when I open your CV and it doesn't look like the CV of a designer, you might already, have lost me on the way. So really think of it as an ecosystem of like different pieces. And no matter where you show up, or no matter on which platform you present yourself, always show kind of like a bit of your own brand. This doesn't mean you have to create your own logo or it has to be like super special, but think of it as, okay, it needs to be clean, it needs to be simple, and it needs to be well balanced, because no one's gonna give you the credibility if, for example, you have a CV that looks like, oh yeah, you quickly put it together in Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and it doesn't even have a proper formatting, right? Because even though your portfolio might be great, I might open this document first, and I might think, oh, okay, well, like this doesn't look like someone who has a good feeling for design, right? Even if it's just subconsciously, and I'm aware that maybe you just didn't pay that much attention on this one particular piece. The same in LinkedIn. I see a lot of people who have like either very broad and generic things in LinkedIn, like, so basically like I do everything, or I don't know, or they have a title that says something else. So they apply as a designer, but then their LinkedIn profile says, I'm a software engineer. And that makes me like very confused. I know you might have these different professions, or you might have this different experience, but I would recommend that once you start applying, really think of, what is my brand? How do I want to be seen? How do I want to be perceived? Because if you attract my interest with your application, I will look up your profiles, right? I will click on your LinkedIn, I will look at your portfolio, and maybe, I don't know, if you wrote a blog article or something else, I might also go there. And in my mind, it has to be consistent. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be consistent, and it has to speak to me along the way, no matter which platform or which document I look at. So the next piece, I talked a little bit about it already in the beginning. So oops. That was one too far. Connect to their context. So if you did your homework, you already know a little bit about the company, right? And you might apply for a company that is in an industry that you have no experience with, or maybe no prior knowledge, but there are many ways how you can connect to a business. Maybe it's the business model. Maybe it's, for example, in the Forto case, I always talk to people about how do you feel about designing stuff that has a reference in the real world, because we actually move stuff all around the world. So there's a container, there's a ship, there's a plane, etc. So people who are passionate about travel or who worked for food delivery services or whatever, they already have a connection, right? Because it's moving stuff in the physical world. So these connections do not necessarily have to be like one-on-one, but think about how can I connect to it, right? Is it B2C? Is it B2B? How can, or maybe I remember one of our co-founders, when I interviewed with him, it was my first interview, and he started talking about his father who worked for a shipping line. And that was kind of like his first touch point. Or I once had a candidate who lived close to the port of London. And she said, look, like when I grew up, every time I looked out of the window, I could see container ships. And I was so excited about it, right? So it can also be a very personal story, or something that kind of like builds this connection towards the company that you're applying for. It can be just a hobby, it can be personal interest, or it can be prior experience that connect you to the company and the role. So case studies. I will talk a little bit more about the structure later. So one thing that you have to keep in mind, from my perspective as a hiring manager, your portfolio is only as strong as your weakest project. That doesn't mean that they all have to be on the same level. They all have to be like, let's say you have 2, 3, or 4, or whatever. Of course, they have varying depths or varying challenges and so on. But there needs to be a consistent level of quality. Don't add stuff just to add stuff. If you don't feel like it's showing the best side of your work, or it's like showing the best you can do, because I might look through it and then it might make me like, why is there like one really brilliant case study, but then the other 2 don't convince me, right? I would rather go in with less, but more quality than just adding things for adding things. Or sometimes people add stuff that they've done in school a couple of years ago or something like that, that are a little bit outdated and so on. So I would rather have someone with one really strong case study than someone with, let's say, 1 that is okay and 2 that are weak, right? So really think about quality over quantity. If I want a second case study, or I feel like I'm not sure, I usually ask for a second one, or I give people a shot when they're in the deep dive, and then we have a design challenge or something like that, so I can get a better understanding of where they are. So for me, the worst applications for me are the ones that are generic. So generic, I mean, sometimes I have these applications or case studies, portfolio websites, I open them and you could put one on top of each other and they're all the same, right? And I know that UX follows a particular process. And of course, there are parts to the profession that you should know about and that are kind of like standards. But at the same time, you need to add your personality and you need to showcase your superpower or what differentiates you, because otherwise it's really like a template that you downloaded from the internet, right? And today, I mean, you can do that, right? If you Google UX case study, you can probably just pull it down and then like fill in some other content. But be aware, I've been in this business for quite a long time and I see that, right? So I kind of have a sense of, was it really you that thought through it? Is the way that it's worded, that it's structured, the way you present the work really you? Does it have a personality, right? Keep that in mind when you prepare it. So quick recap, and now we have a few questions, but I will do the recap first. Find your superpower, think about what differentiates you. Create your little brand personality. Again, you don't have to create a logo or like a whole like corporate identity, but try to think of it as, if the hiring manager opens whatever platform or whatever document, do they get the same sense of who you are and how good you are as a designer? try to connect to the context of the company, the people you're interviewing with, and present only your best work. Like, don't dilute the quality of your portfolio just because you wanted to add more. Really focus on quality. So the Q&A, now I'm looking at the questions. So number one, so the platform for the portfolio, what's the best one? I think it depends a little bit on you, right? If you have coding skills, or you can work with WordPress, but also make it look nice, of course, right? Like build your portfolio website and try to do it there. But then at the same time, I met many designers who are like, they got lost in it, right? Because you're never happy with your website, and then you do it like all over again, and you're not good enough at coding, and then it looks shit, and you're unhappy. If you're one of them, actually, I was one of them. So I don't know, in the past, I tried, I think, 10 times. So then go for another option, right? So I've had very successful applicants who built it with tools like Webflow, who built it in Figma. I mean, Figma gives you all you need, right? It's interactive. You can build it like a prototype. It behaves like a website. I have a lot of candidates who sent me a Figma link, and it shows me how proficient they are with Figma. So if you're comfortable with that, because you can make it look really nice, you have 100% control, you do not depend on anyone else, you don't have to find anything, right? You don't have to get your own domain or like take care of hosting or whatever it is, then do it in Figma. It's fine. It's really about the quality. Some people also do it in Notion. So I have quite a couple of people who do it in Notion. The only limitation in Notion is, I mean, it looks a bit like a wiki blog, right? Like, I mean, in Notion, you will have to invest a little bit more in creating the visuals that look nice, that you can embed in the page, because the pages themselves are quite minimal and quite boring. But for me, it's really more about the story and the content, etc. Again, if you get lost trying to build your portfolio website because you either don't have the tech skills, or you don't have the opportunity, or you don't have the budget to host your own website, etc., then just use Figma or use any other free tool that gives like clickable access. I also have some applicants still who provide a PDF file on Google Drive, and they just send me a Google Drive link or a download link. If they're good applicants and if the case study is good, I'm also going to look at the PDF, right? So that's for me like not a criteria. So I would really say, before you spend too much time trying to go for the perfect solution, really try to be practical and pragmatic and be fast at doing it. So how best can one tailor his portfolio to show his unique superpower? So I think that when you create your case study, right, you usually go through the design process end to end. So you might have done an initial analysis, a problem analysis, maybe some research, maybe some, I don't know, prototyping and testing, and so on and so on. If you look at the process and you look at where are my strengths, right? Are my strengths in research? Then really try to showcase these strengths, show your methodology, maybe share your, the interview guide, share some insights that you collected during your research. If your strengths are translating it into a really cool UI, then show me more about that. Show me different iterations, show me how, maybe if it was included into a design system, show me that process. How did you do that? And so on, right? So I think it's really like, how much do I show of which phase of my case study and of my process? And I think the second thing is, it really starts with wording, right? If you Google UX design portfolios on the internet and you look at the really good ones, they have like kind of like a tagline. Hi, I'm Kenny, I'm a product designer. I work at Forto and I'm super passionate about design systems. So I know, or I don't know, I have a background in software engineering and I'm really passionate about creating scalable design systems. So I immediately know what kind of superpowers are, right? So if I would say, I don't know, I've been a designer for 17 plus years and I love to humanize technology to tackle complex challenges. It's a more like philosophical, strategic level, right? So think about your tagline, think about the wording, how do you describe yourself? And then like which details do you show in your portfolio? How deep do you go into the details of the methodology that you applied? That's how I would describe it. In other fields, and do you do away with all those job experience in your resume? So, I mean, the way I do it is it depends a little bit on the length of your other experiences, and it also depends on, do these experience kind of relate to a design role, right? For example, if it's in software engineering, or even if you've been designers who've been in HR or in whatever, like these roles, they also kind of equip you with certain skills, right? That might be interesting for me. But then I would add them, but I would describe them in a way that I kind of get a feel for, oh, okay. Or if someone was a project manager, I immediately think, oh, cool, this person is very organized. That's great, right? For a designer, that's also great. If it's really something that you feel like it doesn't relate to it at all, you can add it as a one line, right? To not have the impression that you have a gap in your resume, because if you just leave it out, it looks like, okay, what did you do during that time? But don't add a description or go too deep into it. That's how I would do it. And of course, it depends on the length of the list and your resume. So when I now create my CV, I usually only show the last 8 years or 10 years, right? But that's because I've been in the industry for so long and no one is interested in what I did 15 years ago, right? And if they're interested, they're going to talk to me about it later anyways. The design portfolio, what are the things recruiters look for in a design portfolio? So I mean, recruiters, usually the person who reviews is not the recruiter. They review it as well, but usually you have a designer or a design leader who looks at the portfolio and does like the final check. If it's a recruiter, they usually get a brief from the hiring manager, from someone like me, right? Because the recruiter usually doesn't come from a design background. It depends on the role again, right? But it mainly depends on, so I want to see in-depth thinking. So you need to show that you know the design process. You need to show that, again, what I talked about in the beginning. Don't be generic. Don't like, for example, if you just put in the double diamond, I had many applicants to do this. It's always like, it always starts with the double diamond, but it's basically just the picture they downloaded from the internet. Then I'm already like, well, okay, yes, I'm a designer. I know the double diamond and it's great that you know it, but what does it mean for your case study? So no matter what you show, be specific, be well structured, think about the presentation, show your analytical skills and show that you really thought through it, right? Show your depth in thinking and show how specific it is. And we'll get to the portfolio structure a bit later. So I might talk about that a little bit more in the next phase as well. Behance, it's an interesting one. So I know that Behance was really big a long time ago. So since I've been in the industry for a while, I still remember that time when everyone was on Behance. I think Dribbble is still popular as well, but I think it also, like, it's not, the peak is already a little bit over, right? So the limitations I see for Behance is usually people, I mean, you add a big picture, right? So it's very hard to read sometimes. It's very hard to parse. That's what I personally find hard about it. If I would have someone who shows a Behance portfolio or a Behance case study, I look at it, I read it. It's not like I exclude it, but I have to say it has a bit of a touch of, oh, okay, like it's not really what we do today anymore, right? And tech is a very fast-paced industry, so you have to stay on top of the trends. And I feel like I would rather move to Figma and add a Figma link than really go on working with Behance. But I wouldn't exclude the candidates. I just don't think it's the best tool to read and really present your work, because it's like this one big scrolling page, and then you create like this one big, or like different pieces of pictures that you put on top of each other, or at least that's what most people do. So I'm not the biggest fan. It was great 10 years ago or something when Behance was really big, but I would rather consider move away from it. That's my personal perspective. I wouldn't disqualify the candidate. I still have candidates like this, but yeah, I don't think it's the best according to what we have available today. More on how to add personality to our portfolio or resume. Often use available templates. So I think it's okay to use templates. If you use out-of-the-box templates and you don't want to rework them completely, choose something that is very minimal, very slick, very simple, very minimal. Nothing that I would recognize, because if it's a template, I mean, there are templates out there also for websites. You see them and you immediately know, oh, it's that template. So if you go for a template, pick something that is like very minimal, maybe rework it a little bit. How you add personality, in my perspective, is a lot about the story you tell. So I'm going to talk about that later in the next section. How do you tell your story? How do you describe yourself? It's like these little details, right? Like sometimes we have like these pages where it has like, hey, I'm Stefanie, I'm a designer, this and that. And like in this first sentence, I want to get like a feel for your personality. It doesn't have to be the look and feel or like the layout that kind of shows me this personality. But if it's not, then really think about the wording, try to tell your story, make it a bit personal, right? Show me who you are, so it sticks. Because if the layout and the wording and the way you present your work is generic, I might just forget about it, right? It doesn't like really stick in my mind when I look through, I don't know, 50 or 100 of them. But I will go a little bit more into the storytelling later. So number 3, here's where I will add some details about portfolio and storytelling, etc. Portfolio. So I think one of the most painful aspects is what hiring managers are looking for, and unfortunately it's the truth. I look for case studies where you solve the real problem. And I know it's very difficult because I also know that a lot of people who just started off, right? They have projects from university or from a UX course or something like that. The problem is that these fictional projects, they don't show me how you performed when you were facing challenges or constraints, right? Because there were no constraints in theory. And I cannot see how you were driving decision-making. So I know not everyone will be able to have a real project, but what I always tell also my mentees, try to find, like, for example, nonprofit organizations, right? They're super happy to work with people who are willing to work for them. Ask your friends and family, ask small local businesses, maybe start with an internship, even if it's only on the side or 1 day a week. So I can tell you the first website I ever designed in my career, that was during university. I did it for a local organic farmer association because I grew up on the countryside. They didn't have any money, but they did great stuff, right? So it was like a union of farmers and I loved it. So my mom bought groceries there and I was like, oh my God, I love them. They're really cool. And actually the website had a cow on it. I still remember that. So my first ever website I designed for them as part of my university project. But what was great about it is that it was a real organization. So I talked to them, I tried to understand where they're coming from, what their values are, what their problems are, how do they want to sell their products, and so on, right? So, and even if, I don't remember if the website was ever built, but it was already like the first step towards a real project. Another thing I did was that I created a website. My dad was a skiing instructor, so I grew up in the mountains, and he worked for a skiing school, and they were like super small, like 10 people or something like that. So I created their logo, and then I created their website and their folder for free because I wanted to have something that is real, right? And people who took skiing courses actually got this folder and they looked it up on the website. And these were like my first projects. So I think there are always opportunities to do that. Again, nonprofits are also a great opportunity. I know that there are some platforms like Upwork, etc., where you can also do like freelance projects, etc. If you can land something there, of course, you're going to have a real project as well. But I think it's just a reality that you have to face, that it will be very, very difficult to land a job with only fictional case studies. as sad as it is, but it's really, really difficult. So really talk to people. I'm pretty sure you will find someone, or you will know someone who is happy to work with you or give you the opportunity. Another thing when it comes to portfolio and how you present your work, focus on impact. So I collected a few classic things that people write when they present their projects. So when they describe what they did, they say stuff like, yeah, so I wanted to improve the usability of the product, or I wanted to help people find, I don't know, a doctor or whatever, a store or whatever, or yeah, we wanted to make information accessible or stuff like that. For me as a hiring manager, this is not enough, right? Always think of what's the impact? If I do this, what's the impact and the outcome for the business, right? So why would you want to improve usability? So I added it to the right? Like how I would rephrase it, for example, I wanted to increase efficiency and reduce error rate when people use the product, because I immediately get a sense of why is this valuable for the business and how can I measure it, right? Because usability is great, but if it doesn't add business value or it doesn't matter, then it also not really it's not a strong goal setting. The same help people find set, right? You could say, okay, I want to help people in achieving this by connecting them with the right doctor or right coach or right whatever. Always think of impact and outcome when you kind of describe your projects or when you define the title of your case study. Or then the last one is basically okay, why do you want information to be accessible? You want it to be accessible because then probably less people are going to call you for help. So for example, reducing customer service costs could be actually a measurable goal by making information easily accessible. So when you try to describe your projects, always think of outcome, no matter if it's fictional or if it's a real project, always try to rephrase it, right? Not just say, I did this, or I think it would be great if people would get that, or I want to help people do that. Why do you want to do that? How does it help a business? How does it help an organization? And how would you measure it, right? Because it's very closely connected to how you measure it. If you want to add a fictional case study, and I know I know for junior designers, it's sometimes there's no way around that. If you want to show a little bit more, make sure that you really treat it like a real project. The only difference is, since you don't have access to the problem space, like in a real project, define a hypothesis. Tell me how you came up with this hypothesis. What's your assumption? Did you do your research? Did you find data on your target group, etc.? Right? You can do it on the internet. You can read through studies. However you're going to do it. I would also advise really do guerrilla remote testing, test it with friends, or use something like Maze where you can get, I think with the free account, you can get a limited number of people testing your product or website or app design. And then also a very important one, because I see that a lot in the case studies I get, especially fictional ones, or people who are more junior who wanted to show something they did during a course or in school. Very often they forget to define the success metric, because of course in a fictional project, you cannot track them. Because if no one's using it, how are you going to track it? But make sure that even though you have this limitation, tell me what would be your success metric? How would you track the success of your solution if you would have the opportunity to? So don't just not think of these aspects because it's not a real setup where you can actually execute on it, but really show me your end-to-end thinking as if it was a real problem you're solving. I think that's very, very important. And now, we're going to get more into the details about this personality and how do you present yourself, right? I know everyone talks about it, but it's actually true. You have to tell a story, right? It's all about storytelling. You have to get me excited as a hiring manager, attract my interest, and also help me understand the why within a limited amount of time. And what I also find very important as a hiring manager, also because I don't have time to look through 50 wireframes or 20 different screens, right? The way I look at it, I scan it. And really think of which artifacts, which sketches, wireframes, screens do you want to add that support your story. Don't create an abstract that says like, and then I created wireframes, and then you just show like 20 wireframes. And I'm like, okay, why? What's the user journey? What's the user flow? Did you test it? I mean, it's great to see that you know how to create a wireframe, but I only need to see 3 wireframes to see that you know the craft of creating a wireframe, right? So adding 20 wireframes doesn't really add value for me, right? If it's something that you prepared for user test and you said, so I did my first user test with the low fidelity wireframe prototype, then great, then show me the prototype, show me exactly why you created these wireframes and how that looked like. So yeah, that's I think very important, because I have many case studies where it feels like, and then I sketched out the solution. I'm like, okay, cool, these sketches look good, but why did you do that, right? Like, what's the why behind it? How does it tie into your story? How does it support the message you want to send, right? Why did you do a paper prototype, or why did you immediately jump to Figma, or whatever you decided to do, and however you decided to go through the process? So there's a lot of content on it, but for me, like when I think about the case study, and I mean, you're gonna get a lot of good like best practice examples on the web, but everyone is a little bit different because of their unique superpower, right? But for me, so the first section is you need a title that attracts my interest, and ideally it's outcome oriented. It's the same as I showed you previously, right? Don't just say, I don't know, designed an app for XYZ, right? Pick a title like improving people's life by this and that, designing or creating this product. Like, try to tie the why and the outcome and the impact into the way you describe your case study. And then sometimes like people add an abstract that explains a little bit more about it, because otherwise the titles get like really long. Then again, because I don't have much time to scan it, try to add a summary on top of it, where it can get like the most important information, like company, what is your role and your responsibilities in the project, how long? It's a very important information. How long did you work on that? And then I added this one because it's actually really important, and really good case studies have that. Already add a summary of the impact, right? So for example, we improved the conversion rate by XYZ, or I don't know, we reduced the error rate, or we, I don't know, help people to increase their whatever health by this and that. If you add a summary already on top, it attracts my interest more, because a lot of people only talk about it in detail in the end, but that means I have to go through the full case study to already get a sense of it. Then next part, problem statement. How does the problem manifest? How do we know it really exists? Who are we solving the problem for? And do you have data? So if you say, I want to solve this problem for this target group, I want to see numbers, statistics, how big is the problem? If I would have to size it, right, is it like 20% of, I don't know, women between 30 and 50 have this problem? Okay, good, I get a sense for it, right? But don't just say, oh yeah, I wanted to create this product for this and this target group, without explaining why, and without explaining the relevance and the size of the problem you decided to solve. And then these chapters, so I wrote 1 to X. So basically you walk me through your story, right? So you say, okay, this is like the first thing I did, it's probably research, or then later it can be again wireframes, prototyping, etc. And what is important is always include the why and the how, because a lot of people, especially ones who are more junior, they usually talk a lot about the how, right? They talk about, yeah, then I created this, and then I don't know, made it clickable, and then I did this, and then I did this. But always think of the why and the how. So in each section where you describe what you did, always connect the how with the why. It always has to be both. And then add visuals that support the storyline. Again, show me the why in these visuals as well. And then you can have like a chapter about the outcome, right? The impact of your solution, insert success metrics. Like, did you measure if your solution was successful? If you're not able to measure it, at least tell me how you would measure it. What would you look at? And and then the learnings, right? So think about if you would have the chance to do it all over again, what would you do differently? So that's basically like the building blocks that I would look at when I look at the case study that I would want to see. And then important, I think I said that to Kenny a couple of times, but when you tell your story, never apologize. So even if you have constraints, even if you have limitations, even if you feel like, if I could do it again, I would do it differently. Never apologize, right? Never apologize. Tell me what the limitations were. Tell me what the constraints were. Tell me what you overcame and why. You can also talk about how you would do it differently under different circumstances, but never apologize in a case study or when you share your work or when you present your work. And the second thing, also very important, I see that a lot as well, show that you're a team player, because I'm looking for someone for my team. And a lot of designers a little bit kind of take credit for other people's work, and I have to dig into it but what exactly did you do, right? If you worked with, let's say, 3 other people or another designer, like what was your contribution? And it actually creates a very negative impression because, again, we're a team. And I want to see that you're a team player. So rather really talk about it or give a shout out to the team and say, yeah, I worked with another designer and here's what I learned from this other person, because I want to see your collaboration skills if you worked with someone. So don't take credit for what other people did. Yeah, again, be specific, explain your decision making and trade-offs. Don't give me like the generic by the book, whatever, double diamond or design thinking process or whatever you will find on the internet. You can use it, but own it, make it yourself, right? Like make it your own, translate it into what you did with it. How did you apply it? So yeah, the recap, solve real problems, always focus on impact when you describe the goals, try to tell a compelling story and be specific. Right? Don't give me like the general, I know all that, right? So don't give me stuff that you would find in the book. I want to learn more about you and what you did and how you overcame the constraints and the limitations. So most hiring managers don't or won't want to employ entry-level designers. They always, despite the fact that they like your design. It's true. I mean, in the market, it's quite difficult. I mean, the advice I give, I think the more you can have experience as either a freelancer or for a nonprofit or for, right, the more real world projects you have, the higher your chances. But it's true. It's true. It's very difficult as an entry-level designer. It also depends on your situation and on the opportunity you have, if you have another job or not, right? So when I started off as a designer, I had multiple jobs. So I worked, like during university. And then after that, so I worked in catering and as a server or something. And besides, I had like a job for a little marketing agency where in the beginning, I started creating banners and stuff like that. So it's like really try to find a way, even if it's sometimes painful. And I want to be very direct and honest, right? Because I'm really not that, like, I don't believe in selling the dream and saying like, oh yeah, but the market is so great and look at all these job ads. It's a reality. People look for people with experience, right? And you have to find your way and navigate your way. And again, be creative in how you find this way and navigate your way. How can you stand a chance to beat recruiters? Whiteboard challenges at physical interviews. I mean, we'll get to that in the next chapter. I think it depends. It depends on the challenge. Overall, before I talk about it in detail, I think that be yourself, admit if you don't know, like stay true to yourself, see it as a dialogue and ask questions back. I have a lot of candidates, they kind of freeze in the moment. And then I always say like, hey, like, do you have any questions, etc., etc. Like, can I help you in understanding the challenge better and so on? Because I mean, we're not like bad people, right? We want you to succeed. It's not like we're like, look at him, like, or her, like, she doesn't know what to do now. But give us a chance to kind of give you this head start and to maybe, look at it as if I would be like your more senior colleague that you collaborate with. And again, like, don't shy away from saying, hey, I don't fully understand the task. Can I ask you these 3 questions? Or I was thinking about this and that. And then try to look at it as a dialogue. But I will get to that as well. So yeah, one thing, when you get to the interview stage or you start applying, try to get early feedback. I don't know if you know these 2 platforms. I'm actually on one of them, on ADP list. So if anyone wants to have a one-on-one session after today, you can book me. I usually spend 30 minutes and then, I can look through your case study or your portfolio or whatever you want to show. But it's really great. It's not only about me, right? But you will find people from all over the world. You can book mentors for free. It's people on all levels, from like senior, lead designer, head of designs, etc. They're happy to walk through your portfolio and give you feedback. I have a lot of mentees on ADP list who actually landed their first job by discussing their portfolio with me and other people on this platform. And it's really great because they don't know you, right? They come in with a very fresh mind. And everyone can do that. So you just have to sign up and book a session. Of course, also with people or peers. Just be aware they might be a bit biased, because I experienced that even in our team. I always say, like, you like each other too much to give direct feedback. So I encourage you to also approach people who you don't have like a personal relationship with. So so I'm sitting at the laptop. It's so difficult sometimes with the Zoom and the things. So second thing, when you land an interview, no matter if it's the recruiter or me, a hiring manager, so interview your interviewer. It's really important because the earlier you get a deeper understanding in what they're particularly looking for, the more you can shape your answers. And I would really advise start with the recruiter already in the screening call, because I can give you this inside tip. Like, every time my recruiter talks to a candidate who asks a lot of questions about the team, about Forto, about whatever, she gets like very excited, right? And she's like, oh, Stefanie, she had so many questions. I think you should talk to her, because I couldn't answer all of them, but she seems to be like super interested in our company and in the team. So I listed a couple of them, right? But I mean, of course, there can be others, like ask them how the team is organized, ask them what the most important thing is that they're looking for, or what would be your expectations of me in this role in the first 6 months. What is the biggest challenge you're currently facing? What are the strengths, but also the growth areas of the team? Or also stuff like, what are the company values? Or I encourage people to ask me about my journey, right? Like why I joined the company, what I like about it the most. And then I think the last one, it's also a very important one, because it shows that you care about the design maturity in an organization, right? So if you ask, how is design perceived in the company, right? Do we get a seat at the table? Like, what is design in this particular context? Because there are many different organizations where sometimes design is like, oh yeah, you make things pretty. And then in some organizations, like for example, in my team, for me, it's about strategic value, right? We're part of product development. We're not just like executing on what other people decide. So usually when you ask this question, your hiring manager or the recruiter will think, oh, okay, this person thought it through. They maybe have some prior experience. They really think about the value of design, right? Don't be shy. Don't think just because maybe you have limited experience that you cannot ask these questions. And ask them as early as you can, because the earlier you get answers, the more you can also think about how you answer to questions that will come later on. Yeah, the other thing is, be yourself. Focus on being present. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I still remember my interview with Kenny, actually, because he was like so excited. And I remember like we set the goal for the interview, and I was like, yeah, no, it's just a conversation, right? We're just going to talk about it. I was like, no, but I'm so excited. Can I show you something? Like, I prepared something. I want to show you something. And I was like, gosh, like he's like so energetic. Okay, cool. And show me something, right? And then he convinced me to look at his portfolio, although it wasn't even part of the first interview, right? So, but that was like a very genuine thing, because I felt like he didn't come into this with a strategy, right? It wasn't about, yeah, this is my secret strategy, but it was just him being himself, right? Being excited to have the opportunity to show me his work, right? And for me as a hiring manager, it's like my relationship with my team starts in the first second that I meet them, right? And even if it doesn't work out at the end of the hiring process, right? It's still like during this time, we start building a relationship. And ideally, if you join my team, we will then build on that. And I want to see the person, right? I want to see the true self, and I want to see it like a genuine person. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to, I don't know, be someone that you're not. Try to be yourself. And this is, I think, connected to it, right? Like, show a learning mindset. So even if you took a wrong turn in a project, or you failed with something, or I can't tell you how many things I designed that have never been built, but it wasn't my fault. You know, sometimes they run out of budget, or someone else decides otherwise, or whatever, but that's okay. You know, it's okay. You don't have to lie about it. Just talk openly about it. And also, and this ties back to the whiteboarding challenge. And I talked to, so my manager is the CPO of our company. And I once talked to him about this as well, about his hiring process. And we both intentionally look at how do candidates react when I ask them something that they don't have an answer to. Because this is like where I can see, do they have a learning mindset? Are they really, you know, honest and true to themselves? And I added, like, if you say something like, hey, this is a really great question, I actually haven't thought about it, but this is something that I could look into. And ideally, you drive the conversation further, right? You say, hey, if I would have thought about that, I might have done this and that, or I might have gone down this route instead of this route, right? But don't shy away, don't try to overplay, because usually we know when you try to talk over it, or you're like, I asked something and the person is giving an answer, but not really answering. And I'm like asking again, and I'm like, okay, you know, it's okay. It's okay. Just tell me you haven't thought about it, because that shows that you're coachable, right? Because I will be a manager in the future. So I want to see, how can I work with you?
I'm going to be busy on Wednesday.
Oh, that's it.
So, sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
So, and never forget, everyone gets rejected sometimes. But at the same time, feedback and learning is a gift. That's what I truly believe in. So if you meet senior design leaders, recruiters, etc., really look at it as a learning process and look at it as a gift, right? Because you will be a better designer afterwards, right? You can iterate on your work. You will look at things differently. And even for me as a hiring manager, I learn so much from my candidates, right? So I think it's like a two-sided thing, ideally. Yeah. Ask for early feedback, interview your future employer or your manager. Don't shy away from that. Be yourself. Admit when you don't know. Show me that you're willing to learn and that you're willing to work with me. And then like that you're embracing the opportunity to grow. So, did we have any questions? I don't think there are any more questions to this. So I can jump to the last one. It's the shortest one, but I wanted to add it because I know that it matters and it's something that people rarely talk about. So it's a bit of like my personal approach to this, right? But I also talk to other leaders and other people who've been in this industry for quite a while. So about salary and about negotiation or an offer. So first of all, I would advise, do your research. There are a lot of resources like Glassdoor or other platforms where you can see like average salaries. Do your research on living cost if you're applying for a job in a different country, you know, just get a sense of what you can expect or should expect. Ask the recruiter or the hiring manager on the salary band. So a salary band is basically a range that we define per level. It can be a pretty wide range, right? But this is like the range, and then depending on your experience, etc., I put you somewhere in this range. But usually every company has a salary band or a range for a particular role. Then, of course, if you relocate or you need a visa, do your homework and research which salary do you need for the visa, because sometimes there are rules, it depends on the country. The other thing is, so I am aware that it's sometimes difficult to say salary expectations in the beginning and so on. The other side of it for me as a hiring manager is like, I sometimes have candidates who refuse to give any expectation throughout the whole process. And then in the end, they tell me something that is completely off, because they might feel like, oh yeah, now I'm at the end of the process, maybe she's still going to hire me, right? But this is not going to happen. So, because for me, it's also about trust. It's about consistency. I would never nail down the candidate to one number, but I want to at least have a range. Or if people say, okay, minimum this, ideally this, or from to, right? And this should be based on your research, it should be based on your living cost and so on. And for me, it's do not only optimize for money, especially if you're at the beginning of your journey, it's really about personal growth. And that's why I added these questions, right? Like, first of all, I think the first one is also important because I once read this quote from someone else who said, don't only find a company you want to work for, find yourself a manager you want to work for. So if you had the chance to talk to your potential future manager during the hiring process, you will get a feeling for, is this a person that can help me grow? Is this a person I want to work for? How did you connect with people in the process, right? Kenny knows that from experience. I always have people from my team in the process. So it gives you a bit of a feeling for, okay, this could be my future colleagues. Do I feel comfortable? Can we get along? Do I want to work with them? The other thing is, can I grow in this role? Ask them about your growth path, about the career path, right? But also, are there enough challenges, right? And I think in Forto, I always say, like, it's never-ending challenges, so we can stay here together for 10 years, but really look at, okay, how could my future look like in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And then the last one is more about the portfolio and the case study. So we talked about storytelling and what's your story and so on. So think of it as, how would my story be different in 2 years if I work for this company, right? I have my story today, I have my portfolio, I have my case study. But I know that your story would be very different if you work in a new company for 1 year or 2 years. And every story like helps you to land the next job or to grow in the company that you're in. So keep that in mind, right? It's not only about money. It's important. Don't make yourself small, right? Like, do your research, get a good sense what is realistic, but also ask yourself other questions. So the second thing is, come prepared. So let's say everything worked well, hopefully. In most countries, I don't know how it is in Nigeria, but in Germany and in other countries in Europe, you have a probation period, which is basically 6 months. In Germany, I think it's 3 months in some other countries, where you kind of have to prove yourself and you have like a limited notice period. And the earlier you set yourself up for success, the better you will succeed during these months. So when you land the job, if you have the chance and you have the time, ask them, where can I start learning about the business? What's your design stack? Which tools can I prepare to work with? What's the first project that I'm going to be working on? Or what we also do sometimes is we connect people to their future colleagues. If it takes, for example, because we go through the visa process with a lot of our team members, and it usually takes 2 months, sometimes a bit longer. So during that time, I sometimes connect them already to their future colleagues, because that will help them once they get started. So yeah, be informed, but don't get too stressed out, especially about money. Because I mean, in my 17 years of experience, I can tell you, if you really focus on learning and growth and your impact, money will follow at some point. That's my true belief. Don't sabotage your opportunities or your chances by obsessing too much about it, right? Try to find like a balanced view on different aspects of a job. So do your salary research, be consistent in what you ask for, and then prepare for your first month. The earlier you can start learning about the role, the better, because it will give you a head start into your probation period. And if you focus on your growth and impact, money will follow. So that would be my advice. I don't think there are any questions to this section. I added one more slide. This is me on ADP list. So if you really want to do a one-on-one session with me, you will find me there, and you can book a session. So it's free. You just have to sign up at the platform, but also like consider booking with other designers, or maybe Design Buddies is another community where you can do that. But if you want to get in touch and learn more, or have me look at one of your case studies in more detail, for example, then feel free to do that and contact me. And I'm happy to have a session with you. That was now the presentation part, and I think we're already like kind of over time a little bit, or we filled the time with the presentation. I mean, I can spend 10 more minutes if someone has like the pressing desire for me to do a quick check on whatever the application looks like. Oh, I have a second person on ADP list. That's great. That's cool. Some of you already use it and know it. So maybe you're also too shy, and you rather want to book a session with me. That's also fine. Oh, cool. A couple of people. That's really great. Is there anyone who has any additional questions or wants me to look at something? It's also okay if you book a session and we do it one-on-one and not in front of everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stefanie. I mean,
I hope it was helpful. I hope it gave you a bit of a view on the other side of things.
Okay, I don't want to be biased. I would let Ridwan.
You're biased, Kenny.
So I'm gonna let Ridwan say something.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really good. And even as a more experienced designer being here, just sitting through the entire class, I've picked up a lot of things, even for myself, so I can only imagine that for the junior designers who are just going to come up, they would have learned a lot of things in terms of, putting their portfolio together. I think, the whole problem with portfolio is a forever problem, regardless of whatever level you find yourself. Because even after being around for so long, you still struggle with, what exactly should I talk about? What should I put here? What should I show? What shouldn't I show? And stuff. And having somebody like yourself talk us through that and, help us to really just make sense of how chaotic that whole process can be, and just condense that to, if you really just want to get through this, make sure to include this, and, just put it out. And I especially like how you talk about even thinking about your entire application process, like actually designing the products as well, putting it out after every failed interview or application process, going back to look at it, okay, what could I have done better here? What could I have adjusted here? Just thinking about it like you're actually building a product for clients, and that can help you, just do better and ace your dream job. So I thought it was good. I'm sure that the rest of the class also thinks the same. So thank you so very much for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, so you're giving us about 10 minutes, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a couple of people. So let's just go with one person and let's see how far we can go with that. So Ngozi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon. Please, do you want to quickly share your screen and take Stefanie through what you have done so that we can get feedback from her?
And remember, we have to wrap up in 10 minutes, so be as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
It's coming up.
Okay, before she goes, Stefanie, I know you've given some feedback already during your presentation, so we just wanted to give like a real feedback as it's going to be in real life. So yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Okay, thanks. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Also, good afternoon, everyone.
Can you maybe zoom in a little bit?
Okay. My name is Ngozi Agwai.
Great.
And, Awesome. So I designed an application for diabetic patients to get recommended diets from trained nutritionists. So why I came up with this decision was going through the mortality rates as published by WHO. There's been a lot of people dying as a result of diabetics or diabetic-related diseases, such as cardiovascular diseases. So it became pertinent to do something for diabetic patients. So that came about. That's why I have 80 bites. So a brief rundown on what diabetes is, a medical condition. Basically, when people cannot either produce insulin or they cannot effectively use the insulin that they produce. It works either way. So identifying the problem, I went through the double diamond process, and I used the Google Forms to carry out a survey to be sure that it's actually a problem. An example of questions that were in the survey were: do you have anyone with a medical condition? How do they get their recommendation of their diets? And would they like a mobile app that would recommend? And these were the responses. I got a total of 56 responses from 56 people, and 75% of them actually have somebody or wear somebody that has diabetes. And majority of them also had issues with recommendation on their diets. This says 81% actually want a mobile app where they will be able to get recommendations. So I went further to design or define who this user persona is. And from this research that I made, I found out that it could actually be hereditary. So it may just be nobody's fault, or it's just their genetic. And so I was able to identify somebody, a particular person who is diagnosed with diabetes. So a 67-year-old widow, currently unemployed, she lives in Sule in Lagos, and because of the kind of lifestyle that she's unemployed, she's always at home. And the only time she may decide to go out is when she's having family events. But outside of all these things, she's always confused as to what to eat. Today, somebody is telling her, Google says this, so I shared that idea with her. And I asked her, why not go to the hospital? When you go to the Nigerian hospitals, it takes time to get to see somebody. So she doesn't mind. She's quite techy, so she can operate her mobile phone. She doesn't mind. It's not a pain. So okay, fine. So this makes sense. So I went further to design an information architecture using the Miro project board. And so I came up with this. How do I want the app to look like? First off, yes, I'm going to launch. I don't know if you can see this.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. So this is just like a wireframe. This is my thinking process. The start button, then / page. I thought of sign up for new respondents, and collection of data for old ones. And for the new ones, what information would I want to get? Of course, I want them to register the type of diagnosis they have to help us to recommend the diets going forward.
So maybe I can jump in before you go to the next section. So at the first side for me, what is missing a little bit throughout like the storyline is, okay, you make clear like the size of diabetes being a problem. Yes, it's connected to your diet, right? But what is missing for me is this piece, why is sticking to a diet so difficult? Then like, what are the challenges that people have, right? Is it like just hard to stick to your diet? Is it difficult to, I don't know, find the right ingredients? Is it difficult to have recipes? Because I think in one of your graphs on the top, it said 67% of people get it like from a doctor, and then they have a list of things that they can eat. So what's the challenge, right? Like, I mean, I go to the doctor says, don't eat, I don't know, stuff with white sugar, exactly, right? Like the doctor gives me this. And then I think there was another graph that showed that people have a list of stuff that they have a list of what to eat and what not to eat. So given that this is the situation, what is the app solving for me, right? Like, why is it a problem, right? Like, I think it's like you did a great job in outlining, like why diabetes is a big problem, how it's connected to, what you eat. But then is it because I only go to the doctor every 3 months or once a year, right? Like, what is it? If I put myself in the shoes of this persona or this user, I would probably, after the persona, add another section of, okay, these are the top 3 or 5 problems that this persona is actually facing, and here is how we solve it with the app, right? Why does she need a nutritionist? Or so for me, that was like a little bit of a piece missing in between, just at the first sight, when I look at the way you kind of build up the problem statement and your argument.
Okay, I didn't think about that, but now that you said something, it makes sense. I'll look into it. Yes.
Yeah, and then I think also, like, it's an example. So the persona needs and goals. She hopes to have a list of what to eat and not, considering how difficult. So for example, it could be, I mean, it's not a big thing, but it's more like, how do you tell the story? For example, right? Like Miss Rosaline, she struggles. Her doctor tells her every time she goes to the doctor, which is 2 times per year or whatever, to remember the list of things that she should eat or should not eat, and that leads to a situation that she repeatedly starts deviating from the diet that would be good for her, for example, right? Like, just try to tell the story of this person a little bit, and don't, like, if you have definition, so use a persona, try to make it a blog where you tell the story of Mrs. Rosaline and her problems managing this disease. And then I think the second piece, don't start saying information architecture, but then it's basically the storytelling aspect, right? Like, this is the problem, this is what you had to fix, this is why I decided to add these 3 features to my app. And then the information architecture is basically just how did you translate it, right? But really talk about, this is the problem, here are the more specific problem areas, these are the features that I decided to add to my app, and here is how that looks like. So that's kind of like how I would walk through the story, and not like this definition, information architecture. It's like it doesn't tell me a story, right? Try to connect it into the flow.
Okay, thank you very much. So can I just go quickly to this?
Yeah. So this is the page flow basically of the app. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, let me just come here. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll just present this prototype.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the, pardon me, this is the first time I'm doing this, so I don't have a hang of it yet. So this is the welcome page, the Betty Bites welcome page.
Yeah. Okay, so it's the registration page, and then
off to the registration page.
Login.
So for this is for returning patients, rather, if I have to use that word. So they have to sign in with their email address and password. And then they're logging in. So if you're new, no worries, we've got you covered. So they sign up, and then get a little information about them, their name, their email address, telephone number, and then to select their diagnosis, so this type 1 or type 2, create password and confirm, and then they sign up. So this is more like just trying to engage them so they know something is going on. So hanging, you're almost set. So the reason why we took their telephone number is to be sure we're not dealing with a robot. So sending an OTP for confirmation, and peradventure they didn't get the OTP, please will send OTP. So it takes them now to this next page, and there are a couple of things that the app provides, like this request for a recommended diet, or to plan the meal for the week. You want to learn more about diabetes, you want to join a support group, you want to speak with the nutritionist. And then the patient here is, I'm taking requests for recommended diets. And so it takes you to what's your preference. You want breakfast, lunch, so there's a drop down. So based on the diagnosis that the person has pre-selected, so it comes, the preferences adjust automatically. So the person is taking lunch, for example, so fish, vegetables, soup is with, oh, your recommendation for today is ready. You know, so you're comfortable, you're happy, you can go back home, and that's the end. or you want to speak with a nutritionist, so call an expert. Maybe the person is not comfortable.
And what is, if I type on fish vegetable soup with wheat, do I get a recipe, or how does that work? Then I would have to pay for it, or how?
No. If you end it here, you're not getting to pay.
Okay.
The only time you get to pay is when you want to call an expert. You want to speak with the nutritionist for a personal, maybe a personal consultation, sort of. So for you to call an expert, 2 payment plan, either the basic or the premium. So for the basic, covers the 30 minutes time consultation per week for a 30 days follow-up. So I'm thinking now, a patient who has issues sticking to a particular meal plan, so aside you calling the nutritionist that day, he still has 30 days follow-up. So the nutritionist will keep checking you to be sure that everything is going fine. And then when you pick the premium plan, that gives you 60 days follow-up. Also, so whichever one you pick takes you to the payment plan, whichever one the company decides to use, either it's pay staff or whichever bank transfer, or payment success will proceed. Awesome. So it gives you the opportunity to chat with the nutritionist. So do you want a video call or a voice call? How would you want me to consult you? Yes, and this is call ended. Please rate us. So the rating now helps us to review what we've done, how well have we done it. So awesome. So this was basically it. So for someone who is not new, for example, who has already made this payment, and this person is saying call an expert, so I don't need to pay again. I just takes me here automatically, and I'm able to speak with the doctor. And when I'm done, the nutritionist, and when I'm done, it takes me to the end.
So I think when I look at what you design, right, you have basically 2 core features. One is recipe inspirations, right? Like healthy recipe recommendations. And then the other thing is the nutritionist. And I think if these are like the 2 core functionalities of the app, your whole story has to come basically to that point, right? Because then basically you're saying your hypothesis is that people struggle with, they might know what they should eat or should not eat, but maybe they don't have ideas what to do with it, right? Like, what do I cook today? Because I kind of know about the ingredients, but whatever, like, try to tell a story about this recommendation for your meals, right? And then the second piece could be something like a nutritionist always at your fingertip, but then you have to tell the story of, for example, that it's very difficult to get access to a nutritionist. You only see your doctor, I don't know, a few times a year, but not on a daily basis. Sometimes she stands in the supermarket and doesn't know what to do, right? And then tell this story of instant access to someone who can help you with it. And then kind of like it becomes like one story, right? But it all has to go to these 2 basic like core features that you showed me in the app, and like you have to connect it into one coherent story. And then you can also show that, right? You can show the prototype, and then you can say, okay, here is like, and then you can show the screen, recipe inspiration, right? And you tell the story of how people struggle when they have very restrictive diets to come up with meals, because that might be a problem that she's facing, right? And then she just buys something, or she forgets about, I don't know, not adding this one ingredient, or goes for a burger because she gets frustrated because she doesn't know what to cook, stuff like that, right? But try to tell this story that kind of goes into this happy ending when you show the app. And then I think the second thing you need to think about is, how would you measure the success of this product, right? And this can be 2 things. One is, how would you measure, let's say this app would be built, right? How would you measure the use of the app, right? For example, is it if people pay for a nutritionist, but that's not enough. For example, do they prolong their payment plan, or do they cancel it, right? So retention of paying customers, for example, or I don't know what else, but think about what can you measure in the app. And then I think the second aspect would basically be saying, you could go for a test group of people with this app, and in collaboration with doctors, for example, measure how their health improves, or how basically the cases where they might have too high or too low blood sugar or whatever decrease, right? Add this to your story, even if you're not going to be able probably to do it because it's not going to be built, but try to add this to the story, because then it becomes more real, right? And more realistic. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stefanie. So I think
there was one last question, I think.
Yeah.
I noticed you use Google Docs. Yeah, I use Google Slides. Attach the link to the wireframe and prototype. I actually had a couple of candidates who use Google Slides for their, so we have one session, it's called the portfolio deep dive session. So what they sometimes do is they put this nice presentation together, and then, for example, when you want to show the prototype or when you show something in Figma, you add a link and then you switch between Google Docs and Figma. I think, I mean, it has its limitations, but I think it's good because almost everyone can access it, right? It's very easy to create a Google slide deck and it's accessible for everyone. That's why I believe it could be definitely an option. But again, there are also other people who create something like a slide deck in Figma itself, right? I mean, you can basically create something that looks very similar. I also had a few candidates who created something like a slide deck in Miro, because Miro has a slideshow function. I don't know if you ever used it. And so they put together a Miro presentation and then added links to, you know, files, Figma files, whatever they wanted to show, because I don't only want to see the presentation, I also want to see the detailed artifacts, right? I want to see your Figma file. I want to see, you know, how you structured it, and so on and so on. But I think it's definitely a good option. I would say 40% of my candidates have a Google slide deck, 40–50%. The others have Miro or directly in Figma or stuff like that. Yeah. So I wanted to answer that last question. And it's Sunday evening, so I don't have any more plans, although we're already over time. But yeah, book a session with me if you want to. And I hope this was helpful.
Yes. Yeah, it was. Thank you so much, Stefanie. I mean, we've gone past the time we initially allocated for this, so thank you for staying around to this time.
You're welcome.
I mean, we had the plan to do more reviews, you know, for maybe like 2 or 3 other people, but obviously we can't get to that. So, you know, hopefully they can all go to your ADP and book something with you. And, you know, not just you, there are also a lot of very, very awesome designers on ADP list as well that they can chat with and, you know, just get one-on-one feedback on the work that they're doing. So definitely encourage them to do that so that they can get realistic feedback from, you know, senior people like yourself on the work that they're doing. So again, in summary, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for the presentation. I learned a lot personally. I'm sure that, you know, everybody learned 1 or 2 things as well. So with that, we can bring it to a close. I don't know if you have any final words you'd like to share before we bring it to a close.
Yeah, I can provide the slide deck as well if you want to have access. Yeah, sure.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you so much. So thank you.
It was nice meeting all of you. Thanks for the interesting questions. If you want to get insights on the other side of interviewing with me, reach out to Kenny. He's happy to share his experience, and if what I said was true.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Have a great evening.